It's been 3 months, 92 days to be exact. I know because I count them. Each morning I wake up in this too-quiet apartment and I add another number to the tally. It's October 15th, day 92 of my new life. My name is Elijah Edwards. I'm 32 years old and I am starting completely, utterly from zero. The apartment still smells like fresh paint and cardboard. It's a clean, anonymous smell, the scent of a place with no history. My history, the one I shared with my husband Leo for 5 years. That's packed away. Most of it anyway. I'm down to the last few boxes. They sit in the corner of the living room like squat brown monuments to a life that imploded. Today I decide is the day the monuments come down. I slice the tape on a box labeled Kitchen, Misc. Inside, there's a jumble of things I forgot I even owned. A spiralizer we used exactly once. A set of novelty cocktail glasses shaped like tiki heads. A ceramic spoon rest painted with a cheerful sunflower. I remember Leo buying that for me from a little shop on a weekend trip. He'd said it was to brighten up the kitchen. I hold it in my hand for a moment, the ceramic cool against my skin. It feels heavy, not with its own weight, but with the weight of the memory attached to it. I place it carefully on the counter next to the single plain white mug I've been using for the past 3 months. It looks out of place, too colorful, too happy. My new routine is one of deliberate simplicity, a monastic existence built within the walls of a 1-bedroom rental. I wake up at 6 a.m. without an alarm. The silence is my alarm now. I make coffee for one. I eat breakfast, standing at the counter, scrolling through news on my phone. I go to work, I come home, and then the longest part of the day begins, the evening. Back when Leo and I lived together, the evenings were filled with noise. The TV would be on, he'd be telling me about some ridiculous thing that happened at his office. Music would be playing while we cooked dinner together. There was life. A chaotic, sometimes frustrating, but always present thrum of another person sharing my space. Now the only sound is the hum of the refrigerator or the distant wail of a siren from the street below. At first the silence was deafening. It felt like a physical pressure in my ears. But slowly I'm getting used to it. Sometimes I even think I prefer it. In the quiet, no one can lie to you. My finances are as sparse as my apartment. Tonight's dinner is a testament to that pasta with a simple tomato sauce from a jar. As I eat, I have my laptop open on the small dining table I bought from a thrift store. On the screen is my new sacred text, a budget spreadsheet. Every single dollar I earn is accounted for. Income in green, expenses in red. Rent, utilities, insurance, gas, groceries. I've broken it down to the penny. There's a small, fiercely protected column labeled savings. The number in it is pathetically small, but it's mine, all mine. This meticulous tracking isn't just about being responsible. It's an act of reclamation. It's about control. For 3 years and 8 months, Leo and I had built our financial world together. We poured everything we had into a joint savings account. Every bonus, every tax refund, every time we chose to cook at home instead of eating out, it all went into the pot. The pot was for our future. A down payment on a house, a real house with a little patch of grass and a front door that was ours. We'd watch the number in that account grow week by week, month by month. It was our proudest achievement, a tangible symbol of our partnership, $75,000. It felt like a fortune. It felt like security. It felt safe. I stare at my spreadsheet. The number at the bottom of my new savings column feels like a joke in comparison. But when I look at it, I don't feel despair. I feel a strange, fragile sense of peace, because I know with absolute certainty that this number can't be touched by anyone but me. It can't be risked on a sure thing. It can't be vaporized by ego and greed. It's a tiny seed planted in the scorched earth of my old life, and I will guard it with everything I have. After dinner, I tackle the next box, books. This one is easier. Books are friends, not memories. I start filling the cheap particle board bookshelf I spent a whole Saturday assembling. As I arrange them, my fingers brushing over the familiar spines, a semblance of home begins to emerge. The room feels a little less empty, a little more me. I'm so focused on the task that I almost forget about the last box, the one I've been deliberately ignoring for 92 days. It's not like the others. It's a plastic storage tote, not a cardboard box. The lid is snapped on tight. There's no label on it, but I know exactly what's inside. It's the one I packed last on that final terrible day in our old apartment. It's the box of us. Inside are the photo albums, our wedding, our honeymoon, trips we took, holidays with our families. There are ticket stubs from movies and concerts, a dried corsage from a formal event, little notes Leo used to leave for me on the bathroom mirror. 5 years of a marriage condensed into a 20-gallon plastic tomb. I run my hand over the smooth plastic lid. My reflection is distorted and wavy on its surface. I look tired. I see the dark circles under my eyes. I see the new lines of tension around my mouth. This is the face of a man who lost his future in the span of a single phone call. My finger traces the edge of the lid, right where the latch is. I could open it. I could take a trip back in time, back to when his smile didn't feel like a lie, back to when the future felt bright and certain. I could remember the good times. Because there were good times. So many of them. That's the cruelest part. You don't just lose the person, you lose the memories too. They become tainted, corrupted by the knowledge of how it all ends. Every happy photograph is now just a prelude to a disaster. Every loving note is a piece of fiction. I pull my hand back as if the plastic is hot. No, not today. Today is for unpacking the kitchen gadgets and the books. Today is for building the new life, not excavating the ruins of the old one. Dealing with that box is a job for a future version of me. A stronger version. A version who has more than a few $100s in his savings account. A version who can look at a photo of his own wedding and not feel the phantom pain of a knife in his back. I shove the tote into the back of a closet behind my winter coats and a vacuum cleaner. Out of sight, out of mind. Or so I tell myself. But I know it's there. A silent, waiting archive of a life I no longer have. It's the final monument, and it's the only one I can't bring myself to tear down. Not yet. Maybe never. I close the closet door and the click of the latch feels final. I stand in the middle of my living room. It's no longer just a collection of boxes. There's a bookshelf. A spoon rests on the counter. A thrift store table. It's not much. It's a fragile patchwork beginning. But it's mine. And for the first time in 92 days, as I look around this quiet, lonely, empty space, it almost feels like enough. The next few days passed in a quiet, deliberate rhythm. I established a new routine, a solitary choreography for a life built for one. Wake up at 6, coffee, a run through the unfamiliar neighborhood park, work, a simple dinner of chicken and rice eaten while standing at the kitchen counter. In the evenings, I'd unpack another box, slowly transforming the empty rooms from a sterile rental unit into something resembling a home. Each item placed on a shelf, each book stacked, was a small act of defiance. It was a declaration that my life hadn't ended on July 15th. It had just been reset. I was meticulously tracking every penny on a spreadsheet. My income, my rent, my utilities, my groceries. The bottom line was terrifyingly thin, but it was solid. It was real. I was surviving. And in the quiet moments after the last dish was washed and the spreadsheet was closed, I started to feel it again, that fragile, tentative peace. The silence of the apartment no longer felt like an accusation of loneliness. It was starting to feel like freedom. And then the mail came. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was coming back from a grocery run, juggling 2 bags of essentials. I unlocked my mailbox and pulled out the usual collection of junk mail and a bill. But underneath it all was a crisp, white-windowed envelope. The logo in the top left corner made my stomach clench. It was from the Federal Bank where we had kept our savings. And through the little plastic window, I could see both our names printed one above the other. Elijah Edwards, Leo Vance. My hands started to tremble. Why were they sending us mail now I had closed everything? I had made sure of it. This felt like a letter from a ghost. I walked up the 3 flights of stairs to my apartment in a daze, the plastic grocery bags rustling against my legs. I dropped them on the counter, the cans inside clanking loudly in the silent kitchen. The envelope felt heavy in my hand, far heavier than a single piece of paper should. For a moment, I considered just throwing it away, tearing it in half and tossing it into the trash with the grocery circulars. What good could possibly come from opening it? It was a relic from a dead past, but I couldn't. I needed to know. My finger slid under the flap, tearing the paper with a sound that felt like a scream. I pulled out the single folded sheet. It was a final closing statement for our joint high-yield savings account. My eyes scanned the document, my brain struggling to process the clean corporate font. Account number. Account holders, Elijah Edwards, Leo Vance. Statement period, June 1st, year 0, September 30th, year 0. And then I saw the summary box, a neat little table with 2 lines of text that laid out the entire tragedy of my last 5 years. $75,000. $0. The 2 numbers stared up at me from the page, cold and absolute. It wasn't a memory anymore. It wasn't a story I told myself. It was right there in black and white, physical proof of the void that had been blasted into the center of my life. My breath hitched. The stark white of the paper started to blur the numbers swimming in my vision. The quiet hum of the refrigerator faded away, replaced by a roaring in my ears. The cheap linoleum of my new kitchen dissolved, and suddenly I was back there, back in our old apartment. It was July 8th. The sun was streaming through the big bay window of our living room, the one that looked out over the oak tree on the corner. It was a perfect summer day. I was sitting on our comfortable, oversized couch laptop, open buzzing with an excitement I could barely contain. I had just gotten an alert for a house that had come on the market. It was a small 2-bedroom craftsman bungalow on a tree-lined street, exactly what we had been dreaming of for almost 4 years. It had a little front porch and a yard big enough for a dog. Our dog. We'd been saving for 3 years and 8 months. Every extra dollar from a freelance project, every bonus, every tax refund, it all went into that account. We gave up expensive vacations we cooked at home instead of eating out. We drove our old cars until they begged for mercy. We built that $75,000 nest egg together, sacrifice by sacrifice. And finally, it was enough. We were ready. I clicked over to the banking website, a giddy smile on my face. I just wanted to see the number one more time, to look at that beautiful, glorious balance and imagine it turning into a down payment, into a front door key, into a future. The page loaded. I entered my password, 2-factor authentication, a little spinning wheel, and then the numbers appeared. Checking 124518 credit card, 83250, joint savings, 0 bows, uwe. I stared at the screen. 0. It had to be a glitch, a server error. Banks did that sometimes. Right, I refreshed the page. The little wheel spun again. Same result, $0 and 0 cents. A cold knot of dread began to form in my stomach. I clicked on View Transaction History. My eyes scanned down the list of deposits, and then I saw them, the withdrawals. They started on June 8th. There were 4 more on June 9th. 8 transfers in total, each one carefully calculated to be under the $10,000 limit that required dual authorization. A limit Leo and I had set up together for security. A security he had systematically and deliberately circumvented. The room started to feel very cold. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't a glitch. This was theft. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely dial his number. He answered on the second ring, his voice breezy and cheerful. "Hey babe, what's up? I'm just heading into a meeting." "Leo," I said, my own voice a strangled whisper. "The savings account, it's empty." There was a pause on the other end of the line. It was only a second long, but it contained a universe of guilt. "Oh, yeah, about that," he said, his voice losing its easy confidence. "Listen, I was going to tell you tonight. I have amazing news." "Amazing news," I repeated, my voice rising. "Leo, the money is gone, all of it. $75,000. Where is it?" "It's not gone, Eli. It's working for us." he said, a manic excitement creeping into his tone. "I moved it into a brokerage account. I found this stock Omnicorp. It's a tech startup they're about to change the world. I got in right before the pop. I was going to surprise you. We're not just going to buy that bungalow, babe. We're going to buy a bigger house. A better one. I did it for us." I couldn't speak. The sheer breathtaking arrogance of it stole the air from my lungs. He had taken our entire future, our 4 years of shared sacrifice, and gambled it on a sure thing without even telling me. "You had no right." I finally managed to say, my voice flat and dead. "It'll be fine, Eli. You have to trust me on this. Just give it a couple of weeks. You'll see." The confrontation that night was a blur of his frantic justifications and my stunned silence. He pulled up the stock charts showing me the initial spike after he bought in. He talked about risk and reward, about seizing opportunities. He painted himself as a financial maverick. For a full month from June 8th to July 8th, he had let me keep looking at house listings. He had sat next to me on the couch talking about mortgage rates and school districts, all while knowing he had taken our foundation and thrown it onto a roulette wheel. He kept saying, "I did this for us." But as I looked at him, at his fever-bright eyes and his desperate salesman's smile, I realized he hadn't done it for us. He had done it for him, for the thrill, for the ego boost of being the guy who cracked the code. And then as he was still talking, I saw his screen. He had the stock ticker for Omnicorp open in another tab. My eyes focused on the numbers, and I saw the percentage displayed in a horrifying blood-red font, down 98%. "Leo," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "What is that?" He followed my gaze. The color drained from his face. It's a market correction," he stammered. "A dip. It'll bounce back. These things always bounce back." But we both knew it was over. 98% isn't a dip. It's a crater. Our $75,000, our home, our future, it was gone. Evaporated into the digital ether. The week that followed was lived in a fog of cold, silent fury. I packed my things. I found a new apartment. I moved out on July 15th. On the last day, as I was carrying the final box to my car, he finally broke down. He cried. He begged. He promised he would make it back. But he still didn't seem to understand the real damage. He thought he had lost money. He didn't realize he had lost me. The memory receded, leaving me standing in my new kitchen, the bank statement clutched in my fist. The paper was crumpled now. I smoothed it out on the counter. There it was. The official record. The tombstone. A wave of anger so pure and so hot it almost made me dizzy washed over me. It wasn't grief anymore. It wasn't sadness. It was rage. Rage at his selfishness. Rage at his deceit. Rage at the fact that even now, 3 months later, a single piece of paper could drag me right back into the wreckage. I took a deep, shuddering breath. This piece of paper wasn't just a trigger for a painful memory. It was the final push I needed. The fragile piece of the last few days was gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I walked over to my laptop, opened it, and typed a new search into the browser. Divorce lawyers near me. It was time to erase his name from my life for good. The first call I made the next morning was to a lawyer. Her name was at the top of the search results, her reviews glowing with words like thorough and protective. When she answered, her voice was calm and professional, a lighthouse in the storm of my anger. I explained the situation in clipped, emotionless sentences, a 5-year marriage, a joint savings account, $75,000 gone. I told her I wanted out completely and cleanly. I wanted a firewall built between my future and his chaos. She listened, patiently asked a few clarifying questions, and by the end of the 30-minute call, the process was in motion. A weight I didn't realize I was carrying began to lift. That feeling of relief lasted for about 48 hours. Then the texts from Leo started. He must have been served the initial papers. The first message was just my name followed by a string of question marks. I ignored it. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. "Eli, we can talk about this. Don't do this." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the block button, but I hesitated. Some small, foolish part of me wanted to see if he would finally, truly apologize. He didn't. What I got instead was a fire hose of his desperation piped directly into my pocket. He wasn't living in our old apartment anymore. As I later found out, he couldn't afford the rent on his own and had moved into his parents' basement. That humiliation must have fueled his frantic energy. The messages came at all hours. At first, they were pleading. "Babe, I know you're mad, but I have a new plan. I've been studying crypto. We can make the money back in a month, I swear." I'd read it, a bitter laugh escaping my lips, and delete it. Then came the guilt trips. Our whole life together, and you're just throwing it away over one mistake. I did it for US, don't you get that? The capital letters felt like he was shouting at me from his childhood bedroom. When pleading and guilt didn't work, he switched to blame. This was the part that solidified my resolve. "You know this is your fault too," one text read at 2 a.m. "If you had just been more supportive, if you'd believed in my vision instead of being so scared all the time, I wouldn't have had to do it behind your back." Another claimed, "You were always trying to keep me small. This was my one chance to be something big for us, and you can't even see it." He framed the loss of our entire life savings as a minor setback. He wasn't mourning our future. He was mourning his lottery ticket that didn't pay out. Each message was another shovelful of dirt on the grave of our marriage. He wasn't sorry for what he did. He was sorry he got caught, and he was furious that I was refusing to hand him a new shovel so he could dig us an even deeper hole. I stopped reading them. I let the notifications pile up a digital monument to a man who had learned absolutely nothing. The legal firewall couldn't go up fast enough. A few weeks into the divorce proceedings, my lawyer called. "Elijah," she said, her tone all business. "We've received the financial discovery from Leo's counsel. I'm sending the documents over for your review. Specifically, I'd like you to look at the brokerage statements from June 8th to July 8th of this year." My stomach clenched. I didn't want to see it, but I knew I had to. The email arrived a minute later. I clicked open the PDF, and there it was in stark black and white. A month-long diary of my husband's secret life as a day trading wannabe. It was so much worse than I had imagined. I had pictured a single, monumentally stupid decision, but the statements told a different story. It wasn't one decision, it was dozens. He was churning the account, buying, selling, buying again. Panicked trades, chasing small gains and realizing bigger losses. The $75,000 was being eaten alive day by his frantic, amateurish gambling. He wasn't an investor. He was a man in a casino, sweating and throwing chips at any number that felt lucky. My heart hammered against my ribs as I scrolled through the pages. I felt sick, and then I saw it. A line item dated June 20th, a transfer out of the brokerage account and into his personal checking. The amount was $2,500. The memo line had only one word, personal. I froze. $2,500. While he was letting me dream about paint colors and garden space, he had skimmed money off the top of his gamble. For what? The answer came a few days later when my lawyer, doing her due diligence, cross-referenced it with his credit card statements. The purchase was made the very next day, a brand new top-of-the-line laptop and a designer watch. The air left my body in a rush. It was the final, most profound betrayal. This wasn't just recklessness or ego. This was theft. He hadn't just gambled our money. He had treated it like his own personal slush fund. The "I did it for us" narrative was a cynical, calculated piece of fiction designed to cover his own selfish desires. He wanted the thrill of the win, but he also wanted to reward himself along the way with our money. Our joint future was just the pot he was stealing from. That night, for the first time in months, I opened the box of photos from my marriage. I looked at our wedding pictures, at his smiling face as we cut the cake. The man in those photos was a stranger to me now. The love I thought we had was built on a foundation not of trust but of his self-interest. I closed the box, slid it back into the closet, and knew what I had to do. I texted him. "We need to meet, one last time." We met at a sterile coffee shop halfway between my apartment and his parents' house. He arrived looking tired, a shadow of the man I'd married, but the desperation was still burning in his eyes. He hadn't even sat down before he started. Eli, I'm so glad you texted. I've been doing so much research. There's this new NFT project, it's ground floor. If we can just scrape together a little bit of capital. I didn't say a word. I reached into my briefcase, pulled out the printed brokerage statement, and slid it across the table. I had highlighted the $2,500 withdrawal in yellow. I tapped my finger on the line. He looked down. His sales pitch died in his throat. He saw the highlighted number, and for the first time, his bravado evaporated. The mask fell away, and all that was left was a hollowed-out man. He stared at the paper as if it were a snake. "You bought a watch." "Leo." I said, my voice perfectly level. There was no anger left, only a profound, empty disappointment. "With our house deposit, you bought yourself a watch and a new computer." He couldn't meet my eyes. He just stared at the damning evidence. I thought it was going to work," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I thought I'd put it back before you ever knew. It was a sure thing. It was never about us, was it?" I continued the question, purely rhetorical. "It was about you. It was about the thrill. You felt suffocated, didn't you? All that slow, boring saving. All that responsible planning. It wasn't exciting enough for you." He finally looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears. But they weren't tears of remorse for me. They were tears of self-pity. He nodded, a tiny, pathetic gesture. "I just wanted to be the guy who made it big," he confessed. I was tired of waiting. I had heard enough. I reached back into my briefcase, pulled out the divorce papers already signed by me, and placed them on the table. "It's over, Leo," I said softly. "Sign the papers." I stood up, turned, and walked out of the coffee shop without looking back. The bell on the door chimed behind me, a sound of finality. I didn't feel sad or angry. I felt free. 6 months later, spring had arrived. My apartment was no longer a collection of boxes. It was a home. My home. Plants sat on the windowsill, art I'd bought was on the walls, and the silence was no longer lonely, it was peaceful. That Saturday, I walked into a bank. The air smelled of clean carpets and possibility. I sat down with a personal banker, a kind woman who smiled warmly, and I opened a new savings account. In the field for the account nickname, I typed one word, future. I took a check from my new job out of my wallet. It wasn't a huge amount, just one paycheck. But as I slid it across the desk to make the first deposit, I felt a victory more profound than any stock market win. This money was mine, earned by me, controlled by me, saved by me. The $75,000 was gone forever. That was a fact. But as I walked out of the bank and into the bright spring sunshine, I realized I hadn't lost my future. I had just lost the dead weight dragging it down. I was starting from zero, but for the first time in a very long time, I was moving in my direction. And I was doing it on my own.